You know, the one thing that would absolutely help us when it comes down to fighting against censorship, like actually not even kidding, dead ass, is if more content creators talk about it. And I'm not talking about the ones that have talked about, like, Moist Critical has very been critical, about literally everything recently, which good, honestly. And not people like Asmongold, because Asmongold is of course going to talk about that at some point in time, even if people, really don't like that one take that he had, which understandable. But at the very same time, I ain't talking about those sort of people. I'm talking about the real big content creators, the content creators that are more so in the level of entertainment, and the same level of entertainment that's basically getting smacked across the board with a lot of different things that it's going to affect them if nothing is basically done to stop how a lot of this is going to go. And ultimately you would think they would say something about it. Even content creators that don't necessarily talk about certain things like this usually will break out, kind of say something about it, just to be like, okay, this is a bit much, and ultimately go about it in that sort of way, right? At least for one video. But they don't really do that, and it's very weird as to why. And this is that sort of mentality that has basically gotten censorship for where it is today, right? Because it don't really affect me, or it's in a different country or whatever, or it's something I don't really care for. But yet we've been seeing how slippery this bum ass slope has been, and essentially it has been taking over a lot of different stuff. It's not gonna just be adult content, even though that's where it started. It now has hit to multiple different areas in different ways that no one has really asked for, and none of this really at all, quote unquote, like helps children at all to protect them or whatever, right? Spotify doing the whole age verification thing, YouTube still on that BS when it comes down to the very same thing that they're trying to do with the AI and all that sort of stuff. Not great. Then they try to implement this sort of things with like Xbox and all these other things that really don't need to have this in place, because again, it's just third-party companies taking your information, and most likely 9 times out of 10 they're gonna sell that shit or do something with that to basically make some money off of it. That's essentially what a lot of these people will do, and it wouldn't surprise me if that's just gonna be the game plan from day one. It would not surprise me if that's the case. And still to this day, I see people within my own comment section, at least a few people, maybe like one or two, but still I see people within my comment section and people in general saying they don't know what's going on, or they're still very much opposed against certain types of content and think it's fine for it to be censored and all that sort of stuff, and just everything entirely when it comes down to it. Again, if you don't like a certain thing, that's perfectly fine. Ain't nobody trying to force you into that certain thing. But at the very same time, if it's going to get hit and it's going to affect other things, and we know this and we're calling this shit out, definitely do think you should probably step in and absolutely help out when it comes down to it, right? If anybody's gonna stop looking at that sort of content, or stop looking at something that maybe someone else doesn't agree with, that should be up to their choice. That should be up to their choice, and not necessarily the government or anybody when it comes down to it. As long as it's not illegal or anything like that, then ultimately everything should be fine. And again, whether you engage with that or not, it should be up to the person that is within that level of content themselves, right? Plenty of people I've seen when it comes down to lolicon content has very much shitted on, hated them, and all that sort of stuff when it comes down to it. When DLC and Pixiv started to like really go against lolly content because of payment processors, literally no one did a damn thing. No one did a damn thing, because it's that weird lolly shit. Y'all talk about cunning and ooh and all that other thing, and that shit's weird. That shit should be banned. And yet look at us, the cunning enthusiasts, also now watching the world burn, basically because no one wanted to help their asses out. That is how it is, and yet we're still fighting against censorship, and that's just how it is, because now it's affecting your furry content, and now y'all pissed like, what is this? What's happening? We are sitting in our lawn chairs watching all this, being like, we've been told you this was gonna happen, but no one listened to me. Kind of like when SpongeBob was getting pissed off at Mr. Krabs because he didn't get his damn manager's position. I wanted that damn position, but you didn't give it to me. That's how it is. And now it's just affecting everything. Now it's going to potentially affect GTA 6, and they're going to try to throw in an age verification, which that will very much kill a lot of profits for their game. There's also like Spotify again and YouTube again when it comes down to it. There's even things of the sort of horror games now basically getting taken down. And that's content creators on YouTube and Twitch and Kicks bread and butter. That is your main wheelhouse of games as far as I've seen with the common, gaming content creator. That scary games is your main thing. Could you imagine, because children in a fictional sort of sense was harmed in Five Nights at Freddy's and they showed depictions of that? Could you imagine if FNAF got banned because it literally is about dead kids in animatronic suits? Could you imagine something like that happening? And then everybody's gonna look at that like, wait, why did FNAF get banned? Why did payment processors stop funding and helping out with FNAF and all that sort of stuff? Because of the obvious reasons that are pretty obvious of what they want to censor. And then everybody's gonna start looking around like, well, what happened? But then everybody else is gonna basically be sitting here just like, first time. And that's just how it is. That is literally how it is. And again, you would think, when it comes to a field like horror games, and really just all this stuff in general with how the internet is, you would think a lot of big content creators would actually talk about this. Not no Moist Critical and not no Osmond Gold. We know they talk about this. They're going to do so. That's perfectly fine. They're doing fine. But we're talking about like the big ones. Like the ones that people really, really pay attention to, right? Because as far as I'm aware of, I haven't really seen them in a major sort of way talk about like the censorship stuff in general, like people like a Jacksepticeye or a Markiplier or any of those sort of people. I haven't really seen those sort of people, a Jaden Animation or something like that. I haven't seen those sort of people actually mention, hey, the internet's kind of getting effed up right now and we kind of should bring a focus to this. Because high key, this could also ruin our creators. It could also ruin our creatorship when it comes down to this. Our channels and all this sort of stuff when it comes down to it as well. Because ultimately, again, this isn't an isolated incident. This is something that's going to F over basically every part of entertainment, every part of fiction, every part of just anything that we honestly have. You see how the UK is right now. They can't even talk about immigration problems and things like that without them getting arrested for it, which is absolutely wild. Again, this whole thing wasn't about protecting any sort of children or anything like that. This was basically about trying to control what people think, how people feel, how people say certain things, basically isolating people into this censorship hell of what the UK has now become, and basically all these other smaller European places starting to somewhat follow suit. It's not good. It's not necessarily anything anybody should be happy with, and it's definitely something that, even again, if you don't like certain content, you should still fight against, because ain't no way somebody should tell you what you can and enjoy or what you can be a part of, especially when it's not anything illegal. Because MasterCard and Visa pretty much has proven that, yeah, we don't really care. We'll just take down anything that we don't necessarily like, but we'll deny everything when it comes down to it. Because there's no reason for Steam to even take off their games. There was no reason for itch.io to take off their games at all when it comes down to it. Because ultimately, again, if you say what you said, and if you say what is supposed to be true, then why did you do the things that you did the first damn time, right? Why would you trying to be in that position to take down certain projects of games and certain things of sort, even if it's problematic, right? It's just weird to me ultimately, and that's just how it is. And then you still get to these days, bum ass groups like Collective Shout still being on nonsense. You get random NPCs on Twitter and just on social media in general that's very much still for censorship, not necessarily understanding how dumb they really sound and how dumb that whole situation will be if they got their way. There's just a lot, right? There's just a lot about this that people really don't think of when it comes down to it. And even when it comes to things like third-party companies basically using age verifications when it comes to stuff. Again, it is something that no one of these companies really need to do. YouTube especially, considering that it is basically the face of getting any sort of entertainment right now more than ever, right? It's basically the new form of TV, and essentially that's why Ofcom and all these other UK people in high places of government is pissed off at YouTube. Really, they're not really working together, if I'm being honest. I feel like they're kind of pissed off at YouTube just because they're taking away all their local shows, all their local networks, and everything is basically going that damn route, right? At the end of the day, no one's really using TV like that. The only people that are using TV like that is probably people that just can't afford it, or just straight up people that are just like, you know, I don't know. I guess because of different situations, whatever the situation might be. But still, nonetheless, more and more people are shifting over to the internet, and that is just how it is. And a lot of these companies, a lot of these governments are pissed off because, one, they can't necessarily regulate it nearly as hard, and two, they can't necessarily find all the ways to monetize it as they really want to. I feel like in my bones, it's really those two damn reasons, and that's the reason why, you know, they're hiding behind a lot of this let's protect the children thing, when in reality they just want to censor everybody and try to figure out whatever way they can to use it for their benefit, right? Because hell, even people that is very much in the UK right now using VPNs, you can't really use those over there, but then those same people that ban that sort of thing or trying to, you know, get that shit, turn that shit to like, you know, illegal or whatever, they necessarily just using the same damn method. They're trying to use VPNs too, and ultimately it's like, so you see the problem, you are living your own problem, and you choosing not to reverse any of the changes. That's crazy. That's wild. That's weird, and honestly, it's unethical when it comes down to it. So off that alone, that's like, for a content creator, that's worth talking about, and especially since it's affecting not only just the UK but other places with people in power trying to, you know, implement these things as law, and, you know, try to implement them in whatever way they possibly can, with like the Screen Act in the USA and just all these other things, and even like Australia being like already in a terrible spot with all this sort of stuff. It's just terrible across the board. And again, the more people know about this, the more people could actually maybe do something to help out when it comes down to fighting against censorship and stuff like that. It's a great time. It will be a great time. But a lot of these content creators do not talk about it. You have a massive fat ass of a platform, and yet you choose not to use it for whatever reason that you possibly can use it for actual good. And I said this before. I mentioned this before. Hell, the trailer on the channel as a current right now, which probably will be changed later, but as a current right now, is literally the same issue with, you know, anime content creators not talking about that very same issue when it first brought up with, you know, MasterCard and Visa, and even when it come down to like the English translations of anime, when it come down to it, they was like, it's not that big of a deal, it's probably not gonna be that crazy. And yet look where we are. It is that crazy. Once again, all of us in our lawn chairs looking at them, just being like, yeah, we told you already, but y'all didn't listen. And that is how it is, right? Again, it doesn't matter what content creator you are, what type of content you do. It does feel like everybody should at least try to mention this in some shape and form, in some form or capacity as a whole. Hell, even Iron Mouse, despite everything that she's been through recently with JoJo and all this other stuff, even she was able to speak on this a little bit with the whole Visa thing and MasterCard. If someone like Iron Mouse can very much say something, then there is no reason why, you know, a lot of these good content creators can actually do something with, you know, talking about this subject. Right? There's no reason why Markiplier can't make a whole video for it and just really express how annoying this shit is. Even if he's rich and famous, has all the money in the world, doesn't necessarily matter. It's still going to affect you regardless. Same thing with, like, you know, Jack as well, Corey Kenshin, a lot of these people. A lot of these people could very much say something regarding the issue with these massive ass platforms, and I promise you, if their fan base is still just as passionate as they are, as they claim to be, then very much they can go hard and ham when it comes down to, you know, making certain things just not happen. Like, I feel like if just Corey's fan base alone, high key, if it came down to the age verification on YouTube, I do feel like his fan base dead ass alone could just straight up, you know, halt that whole process when it comes to YouTube's age verification. I feel like they would be passionate enough and crazy enough to absolutely do that. But is that going to happen? No. And unfortunately, that's just the case of a lot of these content creators. A lot of them be in this mindset like, I don't mess with social media like that, you know, I try to stay off with it, kind of keep my mental game good. To be honest, your mental game ain't gonna gonna effing matter, and no one's gonna effing care if literally everything on the internet gets hoed in this sort of way, right? At the end of the day, sometimes put that rich boy ass mentality, or maybe just that high key, high mind mentality down for 5 seconds and get on everybody's level and just basically be like, yeah, okay, this sucks ass, we need to kind of stop this sort of thing, or ask in, kind of press against this sort of situation when it comes down to it, because ain't nobody trying to vibe with this. At least do something like that in some shape and form, and I promise you, literally no one will be mad. No one will be mad in this situation against you or anything like that, and we will very much get a lot more things done when it comes down to the content creator side. And this is why, and I'll say this again, and this might just sound like self-promotion, but I don't really care. This is why you need new channels, or at least smaller channels like myself, to grow, that cover topics like this when it affects things that they care about. Because very much so, things like this, when it comes down to anime or games, should not be affected in this sort of way. You shouldn't be this damn pissed off over a pixel on the screen or whatever the hell that you very much don't necessarily like. But this is the reason why I am very much advocating for people to just follow and just subscribe and watch a lot of these small channels that very much talk about issues like these, or have real deal passion for the things they actually care for. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we see that these top level content creators do not really want to talk about this sort of stuff. They don't really care to bring these sort of things up when it comes down to it. It's time and time again shown that they have, when something big has happened, they have not really reached out and say like, hey, let's go ahead and talk about this real quick, because this is pretty damn important. It could affect basically everyone and everything, no matter what the situation is. They just will not necessarily do it. But you know who will do it? The medium level content creators, the smaller content creators, because at the end of the day, we care. We actually do care when it comes down to it, and everybody else at the top, they don't really care. At the end of the day, as long as they still find ways to make their cash and all that, and that's just really how it is for them. As long as they get their cash at the end of the day, it is what it is. Not necessarily realizing it's going to be beyond something of cash that they need to worry about, because it's going to affect their everyday life in the end, right? Well beyond things of games and fictional content, but just how you do your banking, possibly how you do like your jobs at work or whatever, and all this other stuff. It's going to basically hit on every level that you can think of. Even if you don't think it's the case, it's going to. Yeah, it might start at lewd content, but it's not going to end at lewd content. Yeah, it might start at lollies, but it's not going to end at lollies. Yeah, it might go at furries, but it's not going to end at furries. At what point do you realize, yeah, I might need to say something about this and actually do something before it's way too damn late? And in truth, a lot of these people won't say anything. A lot of these people won't say anything because they're just thinking, oh, I'm outside the country, it's not gonna necessarily matter to me, or it's not necessarily gonna matter to me too much because I got money like that. It's what it is. If things go down, it goes down, and ultimately not realizing how much of it really will affect them ultimately, right? It's just crazy. It's just absolutely crazy. Again, people have all these followers, all these subscribers, and then not necessarily know how to use their power for actual good, or don't necessarily want to use it for 5 seconds to actually think ahead of the game than just what currently is going on. It's weird. It's always been weird, and it feels like a lot of the time with those really bigger channels, their subscribers would be more useful and more better placed in the hands of people that are smaller, if I'm gonna be honest. They are way more important in the hands of people that actually will want to change things around for the better for everybody, versus whatever the hell they got going on that really doesn't matter at the end of the day in the face of something like this. Censorship is not good. No one should be happy for it. At the end of the day, censorship can very much take away a lot of things that you ain't expecting, and that's the big ass problem that we should very much be expressing when it comes down to it. So for me personally, if you like anything that I said here today, if you are very much someone that's against censorship and don't necessarily mind a lot of the crazy content that is out there, and don't necessarily mind freedom of speech or expression or things of sort like that, anime, games, whatever it might be, hit the subscribe button, join us when it comes down to it. Because at the end of the day, I might not be a total news channel, but if it affects things that I very much care for, very much like, and want to see, stay and keep around, very much we need to band together. We need to band together because ultimately not a lot of other people want to. And essentially, if somebody at least stands against the damn tide, at least, you know, that would be something, then nobody really standing against it. So ultimately, let's band together, hit the subscribe button, share this video around, do whatever you got to, because at the end of the day, we need to rally more people to this. Do not stop calling these damn, you know, payment processors when it comes down to the censorship. Do not necessarily stop bringing awareness to this whole thing when it comes to YouTube and how it's going to use its verification with AI to justify, yeah, let's go ahead and see what your age actually is while we basically take your information for literally no damn reason. There is no reason for any of these people to take your extra bits of information that they already have. They don't really need it. At the end of the day, they just want to have it, and that's just how it is. And the fact that a lot of these companies are complying with it and not fighting against it is also effing crazy. It should tell you something. But I'm just gonna leave it right there though. So hopefully you did understand where I'm coming from, because again, if no one really fights for this and no one fights hard when it comes down to it, we're all basically cooked, right, in every single shape and form. YouTube should not be doing no age verification. None of this should be happening with Discord or Spotify or whatever, things that don't necessarily matter. The government was saying that they want to protect children, but really they just want to control basically everything that it possibly can, and very few people are able to, you know, do something about it or change it up in such a form where it doesn't affect us. Still, hopefully you did enjoy. If you did, be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification on your way out. Also follow my socials, and if you'd like to donate to the channel, Kofi and Cash App is available as well. And until then, it's your boy Jay, signing off. Have a blessed day.